Welcome to the Disaster Preparedness webinar series presented by the Huntington Beach Fire Department. When COVID-19 started, did you go to buy water, suddenly find that shelves were empty? Were you taken aback when you went to buy TP, only to find the shelves were empty, or perhaps a limit of one per customer? Did you consider baking bread, once again to find the yeast and flour were empty? What should I do before something else happens? We plan to answer that question by looking at the disaster cycle. The first step is to prepare before an event occurs. Once the event happens, you need to properly respond, then you need to recover, and eventually evaluate what went well and what went wrong so that you can be better prepared for the next event. In this webinar series, we'll cover things such as personal preparedness, household mitigation, talk about the hazards to Huntington Beach, look at how to respond with basic first aid and light search and rescue, and longer-term recovery such as water and sanitation and outdoor living. Remember, you have a lifetime to prepare, seconds to react, and must survive for days.
Hi, my name is Carol Bredis, and I'm the CERT coordinator for the Huntington Beach Fire Department. I would like to welcome you to the first in a series of webinars we're going to do on emergency preparedness. Unit 1, the one that we're doing today, is all on personal preparedness. So disaster planning. Are you someone like Dilbert, where your disaster and recovery planning is help, help, help? Are you a prepper and you've got everything just ready to go? Or are you like our dogs here, phase 1 bark, phase 2 bite? We're going to try and help you get a little better prepared than any of these pictures represent. So do you really need to be prepared for a disaster? Well, the problem is that disaster can happen anytime, anywhere you may be. So your chances of surviving, if you have a plan in place, increase substantially. If a disaster happens at home, at work, at school, do you have supplies in case you don't have access to stores and that type of thing? Do you practice your plan? And have you taken any training? This is all some of the topics we're going to talk about today. So the first thing I'd like to explain is the difference between an emergency and a disaster. So for an example, we're going to use our current pandemic as an example of an emergency, and an earthquake is an example of a disaster. So during our pandemic, the utilities and the internet have been working the whole time. Your stores have been open, although sometimes things were in short supply. They were able to make deliveries to the stores. The trucks could get through. There wasn't a problem with that. And the emergency medical system was working, EMS. You could call 911, you could get fire, police, ambulance, paramedics, all of that. The difference is following an earthquake, your utilities and internet, especially if it's a large earthquake, aren't going to work, and they may not work for a considerable length of time. The stores could be closed, mostly because there's no utilities and they can't even run their cash registers without power. Deliveries to stores could be challenged because of the lack of utilities. They may not be able to pump gas in the trucks. And EMS, your emergency medical system, may not be available. They may be so busy helping other people, they might not be available for several days. So there's some key elements to a disaster. They are usually very unexpected. You didn't plan on something happening today. Emergency personnel are usually very overwhelmed, and your very life, health, and the environment are endangered. So there's some different types of disasters you can think about. Earthquake is certainly one of them. We've had a few of those here in Southern California. A residential fire, flooding, windstorm. Tsunami is especially important if you live in a tsunami hazard zone, or perhaps some type of hazardous spill, whether it be chemicals, gasoline, or something like that. You need to have a plan for your home. Have an outdoor meeting location when you're at home. And this is something we always talk about, whether it's for residential fire or an earthquake. After an earthquake, especially at night, you might take a look around, you might be frightened from it. You really can't see whether your home is damaged enough and you don't feel safe. So you might want to go outside at least until you can get a flashlight or it gets more daylight and you can check things out. And certainly for a residential fire, we always want you to have 2 ways out of every room and a place that your family is aware of so you can all meet outside to make sure everybody made it. Have a reunification plan for in case everyone isn't at home. If you or some of the members of your home are at work or at school, you need to figure out a way to meet up with them again, whether it's you're all going to meet at a relative's home or a friend's home or a park nearby. Have that kind of in place ahead of time. If somebody in the home has special needs, whether it be mobility issues or visual issues, hearing issues, anything like that, you need to plan for that ahead of time. Or if you have older kids that stay home alone, maybe someone in the neighborhood that they're familiar with could be sure to pick them up so they're not home alone and scared. And the most important thing is practice your plan. A couple times a year, just say, we're going to pretend we had an earthquake tonight. And we're going to go through these different steps and make sure you know what they are. And you can just talk it through. So one of the main things you're going to decide, depending on what type of disaster it is, can I stay home or is it not safe for me and I need to leave and evacuate? We've seen with the fires that there are different types of evacuations. Some are warnings that you have to leave now. Some are advisories, you might want to get ready to evacuate. And these are all the same terms they would use here in the city for other types of disasters. So now how and when to evacuate your home if it's really necessary. What route are you going to use to evacuate your home? You might have seen some of the tsunami evacuation signs, and we really want you to follow those routes because we've left a couple streets open for our emergency service people to be able to get into the area. So even though we all have our shortcuts around town, you really want to kind of follow whatever authorities are telling you to do. And this is a huge one we found, especially in the wildfires. Do you have your own transportation or are you counting on somebody to come pick you up to get you out? So those are all things you need to have in place. So one thing that might cause you to need to be able to evacuate would be a hazardous materials spill. If you're instructed to remain in your home, you need to shelter in place. We're going to talk about that in a minute. So make sure you have a radio, TV, or you're on the internet to be sure to be able to hear instructions from authorities. If you're caught inside or outside and near a contaminated area, decide what is the fastest way to find clean air. You want to move away as fast as you can in a direction upwind of the source. And this could be like natural gas, gasoline, some other chemical hazard, that type of thing. And then find the closest building you can to shelter in place. So if you need to shelter inside, whether it be your home or office or whatever, bring your family and pets inside. Close and lock your doors, windows, air vents, and fireplace dampers. Make sure you don't have any fans, air conditioning, or heating system running. You don't want to be bringing the outside air inside. Take your grab-and-go bag or little emergency supply kit into an interior room with as few windows as possible, because again, you want to minimize your exposure to whatever is outside. If you have some plastic sheeting and tape that you can put over any windows and doors to minimize the incoming air, that would be something good to have on hand. You can even go ahead and cut it to size and have it labeled where it's supposed to go, and then you just need to tape it up. So cut these plastic a few inches wider than the actual opening so you have room to tape it as well. Duct tape the plastic at the corners first and then tape down all the edges really tight and seal any gaps you can between yourself and the contamination. So sometimes even adding a towel perhaps underneath a door jamb works really well. So during an earthquake, learn the safe places in your home, where you work, outdoors, wherever you are. Take a look around what you think might be a safe thing. When the shaking starts, you want to drop, cover, and hold under something sturdy, whether it's a table or a sturdy piece of furniture. We started years ago having people in doorways, and they found that those aren't as safe as we used to think. And a lot of times the door was coming around and hitting people either in the head or catching their fingers and that type of thing. Plus, with some of the blind thrust fault earthquakes that we've had, people that just sat down and kind of covered themselves up, the furniture gets moved around the room. And so, at least if you hold on to the furniture, with any luck, you kind of go with it. An important thing to remember, if you're in a wheelchair or walker, you want to be able to put the brakes on so you don't go moving across the room, and then bend over and try and protect your head. If it happens while you're in bed, you should stay in bed, curl into a ball, and put a pillow over your head. Because I always tell people you can fix broken arms and legs, but if your head, suffer a head injury, that's a lot harder to fix. And the most important thing you can do is be sure and put some sturdy shoes on before you go walking around. The most common injury people suffer following an earthquake is glass and metal and other debris embedded into the bottom of your foot. And while that's going to be really painful for you, you're going to be on a real low priority at the hospitals. And you probably are going to have to go to the hospital, get some of that removed, and maybe a tetanus shot and some other treatment. So be sure you put some sturdy shoes on. So just a reminder, what do you do during an earthquake? Drop, cover, and hold, or lock, cover, and hold. And you want to try and stay as calm as you can. Don't go running for your children or pets. The pets, well, the dogs will probably run for you. The cats will go underneath something. And in a big earthquake, when our son was little, he stayed asleep. So a woman in the Northridge earthquake was killed running for her children because she didn't take care of herself first in the earthquake. Take care of yourself, take care of yourself first. You want to be really careful about that. It's just like on an airplane. They tell you to put your mask on and then assist someone else. Be sure to move away from any fireplaces. They do have a tendency to fall down during and after earthquake and aftershocks. So if you feel unsafe after an earthquake, evacuate your house. Even if it's just because you're scared and you're just not sure what's going on, go outside, calm down, take a minute, look around, and then do a methodical check of your home. Before leaving the building, though, make sure there's no hazards blocking your exit. Maybe nothing fell off the outside that's blocking. So just be real careful with that. Don't go running outside. I always tell people, use the acronym STOP. Stop, think, observe, and plan before you take any action in a disaster. It could really save your life. Be sure you don't start a car or open a garage door without making sure there isn't a gas leak. Just something that simple, if there's a gas leak, could be enough ignition to cause an explosion. So don't turn on the lights, stove, anything with a spark. Don't use any open flames such as candles. They can fall over in aftershocks and start fires. And make sure you have everyone assemble at their predetermined spot outside. Same thing for a fire escape plan. Find 2 ways out of each room in event the main way is blocked by fire or smoke. Your secondary route might be a window on a neighboring roof. And if you're have a second floor, you might want to consider having one of those fold-out ladders so that you can escape from an upper story. Make sure your windows aren't stuck, that you can actually get the screens out quickly if you need to, and if you have security bars, that they are easy to open. Mere minutes can make a difference between life and death when you're trying to escape a fire out of your home. So make sure that all your options are open and available for you. And maybe practice feeling your way out of the house if it's dark. To close your eyes and just practice doing that. And in one of our following webinars, we're going to talk about some various forms of emergency lighting that you can inexpensively have around your home. Flooding. The big thing is turn around, don't drown. 6 inches of moving water can knock you over, and a foot can sweep your vehicle away. I was watching a doomsday show on TV the other night, and it showed some people in a car in a flash flood out on the highway over near Las Vegas, and their car literally started floating. And so you have to be very careful about floodwaters. Don't walk, swim, don't drive through them. Be very careful with that. Avoid driving near the coast, low-lying roads, out in the desert especially. You don't have to have the storm when you're out in the desert right near you. The storm can be quite a ways away, and you don't even have any rain, and you can still get a flash flood. So for those of you that like to go out in the desert, be very careful of that. Also, stay off any bridges that have fast-moving water in them. It can weaken support sometimes, and the bridges could have structural problems. And evacuate if you need to. Just be very careful that you don't go through standing water, or especially moving water. Thunderstorms, windstorms, waterspouts, small tornadoes. We do actually get all of this from time to time, although you wouldn't remember it. It's been so dry this year. But if we do have approaching storms, stay up to date, on TV. If there's any type of a weather alert, you'll get that emergency alert noise, and they'll advise you of an approaching thunderstorm. There's some great apps you can get on your phone to notify you of approaching weather. If we have thunderstorms, I know we don't get them that often and they're so pretty, we just want to watch them, but you got to be careful. And being down on the first floor, more in the center of the house with no windows, isn't a bad idea. Definitely stay away from fallen power lines. If those lines are charged 30, 40 feet away, they can charge the ground with electricity. So you need to be extremely careful about that. If you're in an automobile that power lines fall on, unless the vehicle is going to catch fire, do not leave the vehicle. Stay in the car. You are safe from it so long as you're in the car. But if you have to leave the vehicle, you have to be very careful to open the door. And when you jump out, both feet need to hit the ground at the same time, and don't touch the vehicle when you do so. And then shuffle away with little tiny steps where both feet stay on the ground. That way you stay grounded and the electricity doesn't get in and electrocute you. But shuffle your feet a good 30 feet away from where the down power line is. Tsunami. Thankfully, we don't get those very often here, but we do have tsunami zones in our area. Back even in 2011, when the earthquake happened in Japan, the 9.0, we had the water go up by a couple feet in Huntington Harbor. And so while we did not have the dramatic tsunami like you see in the picture on the lower right-hand corner there, we still did have a very chaotic tide, and we did have an increase in the water level. So there's natural signs and warnings of tsunami. And so if you are on the beach and you feel an earthquake strong enough to kind of knock you to the ground, you're going to want to move fairly quickly to higher ground. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to have a tsunami. And certainly to have a large tsunami, the earthquake has to be large and offshore. But it is possible to have an earthquake even on the San Andreas that causes underwater landslides off the coast that could cause small tsunamis. So you want to try and get to a higher place or a couple miles inland. The evacuation routes are marked with the sign you see here in the middle, the wave and an arrow. And as I mentioned earlier, try and stay on those routes. And if you're outside of the tsunami zone, stay where you are unless officials tell you to move, because everybody else that's close to the coast is going to be worried about getting away from it, and they don't need the added traffic of people that don't need to evacuate. And you'll see these different signs along our beaches that talk about tsunami evacuation areas. So the next time you're at the beach, take a look around for those. So know what the plan is where you work. Do you have an evacuation plan? Do you know where you're supposed to meet everybody? Who's in charge of locating the employees and making sure everyone's evacuated the building? And do they have any emergency supplies? Are you supposed to have some at your desk or in your car to take care of yourself? It's kind of helpful to know that ahead of time. And even though the actual structure of the building may be sound, as you can see from these photos I've included, the areas such as filing cabinets and maybe the fault ceilings and stuff can come down unless they're all properly secured. So your building may be okay, but the non-structural hazards could be a problem. What are the plans at your child's school? Every school is supposed to have some kind of plan, evacuation plans. They're supposed to practice it. Some schools have the funding to have emergency supplies and others don't. Make sure that you also know how, when you show up to get your kids, you're supposed to be reunited with them. Usually they will set up some type of a desk in the front of the school, and you will have to show ID, whether you're the parent or a designated person to pick up the student. And then a lot of times they'll send a runner to get the student because they don't want all the parents trying to run out to where all the students are out on the field. So know that ahead of time. It'll really help with your anxiety. And you can talk to your child about it too, so that they know what to expect. So one of the main things is you need to have supplies. 72 hours to 2 weeks of water and food for your home, grab and go bag for your work and automobile. So after disaster strikes, you maybe aren't going to be able to do shopping. The stores might be closed, they don't have power, they've run out of stuff. So it's nice to have supplies ahead of time. Things like food and water and paper plates and that type of thing, you'll be better equipped to either evacuate or if you're just going to stay at home. And many of these items are already around your house, so you're just going to have to maybe gather them up into one particular container. But have it someplace where you have quick and easy access in an emergency. So in case you have to evacuate the home, you can take the supplies with you, but then you can also use the supplies up as needed. So one idea to store a 72-hour supply kit is you could use a trash can on wheels. You can still buy the plastic ones and you can put some items in that. They do not make any picture examples out there that don't show water being stored in this kit, but do not store water in your kit. The plastic jugs especially will end up getting pinhole leaks, and you will end up with the water draining out and your supplies ruined. So store the water separately. But having flashlights with extra batteries, sturdy shoes, a portable AM/FM radio, a wrench or a crowbar so that you can help open and jam doors or cabinets with, food and a first aid kit, maybe some bedding like blankets and pillows, some camping gear, cooking supplies, personal supplies, like if you need maybe some soap and deodorant and that type of thing, and some extra clothing are all good ideas to have in your kit. You need a gallon of water per person per day. That's just for drinking. And if it's hot, you're going to go through more than that. And if you want to use it for cleaning, cooking, or any medical use, you're going to need even more. You're welcome to store tap water, but you're probably going to want to change it out every 6 months or so. Not that the water goes bad, but it may start to taste funny. 3 days minimum of water. 2 weeks is even better. And you want your water, as I mentioned, separately from your barrel in a dark and dry place. And do not store it directly on concrete or in a hot car or a garage. The reason you don't want it on concrete is chemicals can get in the concrete and leach through the plastic. So especially if you do one of these 55-gallon barrels, maybe out in a storage shed, you're going to want to put a half-inch piece of plywood underneath it. And the little packets of water are great for your car because they're designed to be out in heat. It's the same type of thing they use in lifeboats. So that's a real helpful tip to store in your grab-and-go bag. Food. You want to have food your family actually likes. You don't want to be buying canned goods of things that nobody in your house will eat. So kind of keep that in mind when you go shopping. Try and have things that don't need a lot of your water supply to prepare. So pasta and rice and stuff. Maybe the ones that you just heat up in a little bit of boiling water, because then you can save that water and reuse it. They have little individual packets of it now. That might be an okay choice, but you don't want to have to use a gallon or two of your drinking water to prepare them. If you have someone with special dietary needs, you're going to want to avoid having too much salt or sugar. If you have little kids or infants or toddlers, you want to have some food for them, pet food. At least 3 days of food. 2 weeks is even better because you just don't know how long it's going to take before the stores open up again. And in case they're not all pop-top cans, you might want to have a manual can opener in case your electric one's not working. And the other thing out there now is the freeze-dried food for longer term. That can have up to a 10, 20-year shelf life. And that way, if the emergency goes on for a longer period of time, you know you still got some food. How do you store all this stuff? Well, I like to keep things in more than one place because you just don't know what part of your house might have damage that you may not be able to get to your supplies. Buying an outside wall isn't a bad idea, so in case you had to break through the wall to get them. If you have room in your backyard to have a storage shed, that's a great place to put stuff. And then the grab and go bag that we're going to talk about here in a minute, you want to attach it to your bed so that even at night you can always find that grab and go bag. And there's a couple key items we're going to talk about that should be on the top of that grab and go bag. But these plastic bins with the tops on them already too are very nice because you can stack them, and they're somewhat opaque, but you can still kind of see through them a little bit so you know what's inside of it. So that's another good way to store your supplies. You don't want to go out and store up all this stuff and then 5 years later find it's all expired and tastes bad and turned green and everything else. So you need to find a method that works for you to change out your supplies, whether it's putting a reminder on your calendar that says, you know what, I've got a pack of 30 ibuprofen and that's going to expire on June 1st. So since that's not something you're going to probably use up right away, maybe put a note on your calendar in April to buy a new one, pull the old one out, and that way you can use it up and you don't have to throw it away. Same thing with some canned goods and that type of thing too. So whether you do a spreadsheet that you keep by your grocery list and check every couple of weeks, you put a note on your calendar, or you do it the old-fashioned way, sticky notes on a regular calendar, whatever works for you, but find a way. And worst case, January and June, at least twice a year, go through your supplies and change things out. So grab and go bags are very important in case something happens and you need to leave the house right away. Should have a bag for each person attached to the bed. We keep talking about a flashlight with extra batteries, a portable AM/FM radio with extra batteries, sturdy shoes, socks, clothes, keys, medications, glasses or contacts, some snacks, water, a whistle. Having a whistle attached to the bag, you can actually blow the whistle longer than you can scream for help. So have a whistle. And since you might be outside for a long period of time, sunscreen is not a bad idea either. If you have children in your home, you need a bag for them. And the challenge with them is they have this habit of growing. So you need to remember to change their supplies out a little more frequently. Have plenty of diapers. In the Northridge earthquake, people stood in line for a day to get a day's supply of diapers. Comfort items. If one of your kids has a particularly favorite comfort item, try and have two of them and put one in the grab and go bag in case you can't get the other one. They tend to get messy a little bit more, so they might want to have a few extra changes of clothes. Aftershocks and earthquake, your kids as young as preschool age hear about earthquakes and drop, cover, and hold in school. So talking about that with them really isn't an issue. So make sure they kind of know ahead of time and discuss your reunification plan with them. And after an earthquake, monitor for trauma because kids are going to display their upset a lot differently than adults. So keep an eye on them and be sure and take time to talk with them. Maybe have them draw pictures on how they're feeling. Pets, do not leave your pets behind if you evacuate. If it's not safe for you, it's not safe for them. So have a bag with food and water, medications, an extra leash, maybe a carrier, their favorite toy. They are going to be just as upset, if not more so, than your kids because they can't understand what's happening. So have some basic supplies for them and take your pet with you. And shelters are getting better now about either accepting pets or making a way for your pet to be close by. So always take them with you. Have a kit in your car, especially if you drive a distance to work or as part of your job, you're driving a lot. So have some type of an earthquake kit with some basic supplies, snacks, food, water, gloves, sturdy shoes, socks, an actual paper map showing you different ways to get around in case you can't get logged into the internet, a jacket maybe in case the weather turns cold. Consider a half tank of gas is empty because if the power goes out, you're not going to be able to pump gas. So if you need to get somewhere or evacuate, half tank of gas is empty. After that, you go refill it. As you're driving, an earthquake could feel like a flat tire, But you'll look around and you'll find everybody else kind of swerving. So try and pull to the side of the road if you can, where it's safe. Avoid any over or underpasses, power poles, that type of thing, and just stay in your car with the engine off. Wait for some of the aftershocks to go through. Turn on your AM/FM radio, kind of try and find out what's going on before you decide what your next step is going to be. Have a little kit, a little backpack at work, again with food and snacks and uh, extra clothes, shoes, socks, flashlight, extra battery, a whistle, that type of thing. Again, if you get trapped by an overturned filing cabinet in your office, you can sit under your desk and blow that whistle and they're more likely to hear you. So that's all real good things to have. A good first aid kit is always good. People to help you after an emergency are going to be swamped, and you're going to be the one that's going to be doing the first care for yourself and your family, maybe even your neighbors. So take a good first aid class, have a good first aid kit, know where it is and how to use it. Documents and documenting what is important in your life. You see, after these fires, the first thing they want is your homeowner's policy number, your bank account number, your loan number. You need to have copies of your important documents, whether you put them in a fireproof box, put them on a flash drive, send them to the copy of it to friends out of state, put them on the cloud, but you can't always count on being able to access the internet. So having something physical is a good thing. Have an actual photo of each of your family members, because if you have to go looking maybe in a shelter for a family member, saying I'm looking for Bob and he's about 5'8" and has dark hair and dark eyes, there's going to be a lot of other people, unfortunately, that may look like Bob. So if you have an actual paper photo, or if you can keep your phone charged, have it actually on your phone, that's fine too. And have some extra cash, especially in small bills. In the Northridge earthquake, people paid $20 for a gallon of water or a package of diapers because nobody had any change. So have some ones and fives and tens and that type of thing. So we've given you some very basic ideas to start working on your plan and supplies. Talk with your family, put together your plan, practice your plan. Make up grab and go bags for everybody. It can be as simple as taking a grocery bag and putting a pair of shoes, socks, flashlight, and extra batteries in. Tie that to your bed. And then over time, eventually get a backpack or some other bag that you want to use and add your supplies to that. Get your emergency food and water together by every time going to the store, just buying a few extra items that you slowly build up rather than having a big expense. Start taking these steps now. It'll take you down the path of preparedness. And please join us next time. We're going to discuss household mitigation, what steps you can take to prevent things falling and hurting you. If you want more information, if you have questions, you can call our CERT hotline at this number, or you can email me at cert@surfcity-hb.org, or Google Huntington Beach CERT and look at our website. And I've given you here a couple pages that you can go out to different websites where I gathered all the information for this talk. They are all from websites from FEMA and Great Shakeout and the city and ready.gov and National Weather Service, Red Cross, etc. So if you want more information, feel free to visit these websites. I really appreciate you taking time to watch our video.